Hello, my name is James Barbush of Barbush Enterprises, founder of Harrisburg Biz Leaders. At Harrisburg Biz Leaders, our focus is to build people into the leaders they are destined to be. And in doing that, we talk about leadership topics. Leadership topics that involve people. It might be you as an employer, you as an individual, or it might also be your employees. It's anybody. So Harrisburg Biz Leaders is for anybody who wants to improve their leadership skills. It's a place where we share. It's not just about someone talking. It's about leaders getting together and sharing what they've learned over the years. And that's why I'm here today with Barry Schoch, the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. I've known Barry since 1982 when he started as an engineer out of Penn State. We lost contact in the late 80s till recently when he was nominated for the position of Secretary of Transportation. And he did a 90-minute session for Harrisburg University at a project management forum, 90 minutes of fantastic leadership discussion. So at that point I asked Barry, would you do a video interview for us so that we could have some excellent content to put on the Harrisburg Biz Leaders website? And he agreed. That's what I love about this guy. He is available. So we're here with Barry, and Barry is a native of Du Bois. He grew up in Delaware. His family moved to Adams County when his father was appointed superintendent of Upper Adams County School District. 1978 grad of Biglerville High School. 1982 grad of Penn State University, degree in civil engineering. I also graduated from there. Licensed professional engineer. During his Penn State years, he served 2 summers for the Delaware Department of Transportation. From 82 to 95, he worked for 2 engineering consultants. The first venture being in a design area, and the second venture being as a vice president, where he grew that operation when he joined in 1995 McCormick Taylor and Associates, where he was also vice president and grew that operation. So as a young man, Barry was in high leadership positions. He's married, lives in Camp Hill, and is the father of 2 twins that are under 2 years. He can tell you what their names are and how old they are. In January 2011, he was appointed as Secretary of Transportation. Barry has 30 years of experience in the field of engineering. And for 15 years with McCormick Taylor, he worked on some very significant projects in concept planning, financial strategies, and project designs. Projects included Monfayette Expressway in southwest PA, Pennsylvania Turnpike interchange with I-95, something called the Corridor O, which was Port Matilda to Woodland. I did a transportation study, Interstate 83 Master Plan, on and on. These were significant projects that I believe helped set him up for the positions he's in today. Key roles in improving PennDOT's approach to context-sensitive design and training for environmental quality efforts. They also worked on some experimental type things, which the federal government was funding, and they're not funding at this time, maglev projects. But it shows you the caliber, the quality of project, the concept of a maglev project that the government was thinking about. They're not doing right now, but he worked on those. President of the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, Consulting Engineers Councils, and other engineering aspects. So with that, I introduce you to Barry Schoch. He's a friend of mine. He's a very personable individual. I've heard him speak several times now as Secretary of Transportation. And I'm very pleased to have him here today to interview on leadership topics with Harrisburg Biz Leaders. So for my first question, I'd like to ask Barry, as a young person, whether it was as a child, as a teenager, or in your college years, was there something that you can point to, something that you can recognize, maybe a significant event that you felt maybe you were a little bit different than some others and you were going to do some great things?
I think I got told I was different than others by the others, all the way along. But, I think that for me, what made you aspire to perhaps want to be in a leadership role? One, you mentioned my dad. I mean, he pursued his career from a teacher to vice principal to principal to superintendent. He didn't stop chasing the career goal of saying, I want to further myself educationally, apply that to my career, and use to the full extent of my ability to express my own personal views and experience into schools and further his career. And that sort of gave me an example of don't stop trying to be better. Don't stop pursuing higher positions within leadership of your chosen profession. So I think at the family level, I had my dad as a great role model. But the other part for me, and growing up, as you know, I was very involved in athletics. And I think a lot of kids, I wasn't good enough to play at college level or play professionally. But you learn how to compete. You learn what it's like to be on a team. And sometimes in one sport, you might be the best in that sport and be the leader. And then you switch sports and you're not the best at that, so you're just one of the teams. So you learn how to fit in organizationally. You learn how to fulfill your role in that team. And then there's a way to be a leader, whether you're the star of the team or whether you want in practice, you make sure everybody's oriented the right way and doing the drills correctly. And so I think athletics had a big role for me in both teaching me how to compete and compete in a way that everyone feels good about the competition, whether you win or lose. And compete in a way to say, force yourself, challenge yourself to get better. And don't ever think that you're not going to get better. And I think the combination of seeing, my dad in his career and then obviously being an educator, he had a big influence on us competing educationally, meaning be the best you can educationally. So I think those things, I don't know there's one event, it's just a series of events of saying, how do you challenge yourself to get better? And at any interest. I mean, I started playing music in those days. I still play in a band. You just are always saying, how do I improve at something in my life to get a little better?
A big thing you mentioned there was lifelong learning. We are never done learning. I will second that. I am in my 60s and I am not going to quit learning. I am not going to quit.
Good for you, because if you quit, if you say I've learned everything, then I don't know where you go from there. But to me, every day I walk in this building, I learn something new about this agency, about the industry, about the things that affect our industry that shapes my decisions going forward about what we're going to do as an agency or what I'm going to do with my role within this agency or this industry, which I look at it as, I've always looked at it, whether I was in the private sector or now in the public sector. This is my industry, and I want to be a leader in the industry. Now, I'm currently serving as secretary, but I felt at McCormick Taylor as a vice president there that I could still be an influence and a leader in the industry. And I look at our private and public partners in this industry as it's one industry, and within the industry, a lot of leadership, a lot of roles for people to take on responsibility. And for me, you learn from everybody involved, and then you apply that going forward, just like you said. You better not stop trying.
Was there ever a time that you can remember where somebody might have just said, Barry, you're just full of yourself. You're not going to make it?
I don't know that I ever said I wanted to make anything for somebody to say, you're not going to make that. I think it wasn't as though I set out to be Secretary of Transportation or set out to be a vice president. I think in a lot of ways, leadership is something that if you're a good leader and you're working hard at trying to be a good leader for your organization, you get recognized with titles and responsibility. If you set out and say, I want to be X, you may not achieve that, and somebody might say you're not capable of doing it. If you simply go about your job and do it well and get involved in whatever it is you do for a living, whatever you might do out there, if you get involved in it and show people that you care about them, you care about the industry, eventually the titles and the positions will come. And so I never really got told you weren't going to achieve something, because I'm not sure I ever told anybody I want to be secretary. I didn't know that I was going to be a Secretary of Transportation. It wasn't a goal for me. I never said I want to be a vice president. It just, those things kind of happened. What I said to everyone I think that I was ever involved with was, I want the industry and my role within the industry to continually get better.
Well, you're on that topic. What happened when you were nominated, when you were invited? Was it just, how did that go? Was that stunning to you, or surprising?
This wasn't the first time that I'd been asked whether I had an interest, but this time it was a little more serious. And frankly, it was a previous secretary, Brad Mallory, who called me and said, would you be interested? And after I said no about 3 or 4 times, I liked my role at McCormick Taylor. I liked that role. I liked the company. I liked the organization. I liked the projects I was working on. They were challenging. I worked in multiple states, which is interesting. And as you said from my experience profile, I worked on different modes, different types of transportation, which I found very interesting. But when I sat down and talked to Brad about his experience as secretary and the opportunity it presents, and thought about the opportunity to come in and in essence have a leadership role for the entire industry, not just my firm, eventually it seemed like the right thing to do.
Yes.
And then after I interviewed with Governor Corbett and we discussed what he wanted to achieve and found that we were on the same page, it became an easy decision.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about employees a little bit. You had worked in the private sector for 28, 30 years, and now suddenly you're in the public sector. You worked with a lot of government projects. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you view PennDOT employees, how you relate to PennDOT employees. Has that view changed from when you used to work in the public sector, now you're working, private sector, now you're working in the public?
Well, I don't know if it's changed. As you say, I was a consultant to this agency for 28 years. So a great deal of the people who work here, I had worked with on projects side by side for years. So I knew a lot of the people in the agency. I knew what their role was. And I had a high degree of respect and admiration for the agency and the people who worked here throughout my entire private career. Coming in as secretary, I think what any leader of an organization immediately thinks, these are my employees now. All right, they're not coworkers, they're not colleagues anymore. They're not clients, whatever you want to call, the individuals you work with from the perspective that you're looking at. I think for me, all of a sudden it became, these are my 11,700 employees, and I'm responsible for them. I'm responsible for them, their careers, and their families. And no matter where I've worked, I've always felt that if I'm the one who employs you, I take on that responsibility for your career. And to me, that's as important as anything else you're trying to achieve, is that you have to help people achieve their career goals. And so for me, coming to PennDOT, I had to learn some aspects of the business that I hadn't worked with before, like maintenance and safety administration, and understand what they do, and then understand what their goals and objectives were to try to help them achieve it. They're great people. They work hard. They, we all take for granted that the snow's cleared, and that the roadways, when a flood event or a storm occurs, that they're reopened quickly. And it doesn't happen without a heck of a lot of training, preparation, communication, and folks working. We had people in the floods last September who lost their homes personally and were still out inspecting bridges.
Wow.
If that doesn't tell you about the commitment of these professionals, I don't know what else would. I mean, I was just flabbergasted by the fact that so many people in the Northeast region had personal losses and yet were still at work doing their job.
That's good information, because there's so much talk about the state worker, and it's a lot of negative talk, but what you brought forth is a lot of positive talk. And I know I just came across the article for the PennDOT Star of Excellence Award winners, 30-some people that you personally recognized. Tell us about PennDOT employees from the perspective of what kind of training does PennDOT provide? What kind of, not just from technical aspect, from a people aspect, a leadership aspect, what do you think people should do for themselves? Maybe, sometimes their employer can't provide training because maybe the budget was cut, but what do you think about training for staff as well as people getting their own training? Well,
I think there's two different aspects. We're in a technical field, okay? You're an engineer, I'm an engineer. So there's technical training for one, which is certainly a requirement and relevant to getting people both on-the-job training and then organized outside training to make sure they're technically proficient. As you well know, from when you and I were working together, we used to roll plans out at drafting tables and look at them, right? I mean, you were the bridge engineer, I was the highway and hydraulic engineer. We actually sat around a table and looked at plans. Well, today they're done online.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of technology changes, materials change, and we have to keep our folks current. That's technical training. On the leadership side, we emphasize heavily here training for communications, which to me, I know we'll talk about this probably, but to me, a major component of leadership is communication, both a vision and how to communicate with your staff. So communication is an emphasis, and then we also have a leadership academy that we put people through and challenge them to look beyond what they do for a living and look at things that affect our entire agency. to give them some exposure and experience of what it means to lead by getting out of the area of your technical capability and studying things that are going to affect the entire agency. But beyond that, as you mentioned, I think we ask employees there are limits to our funds. There's a limit to any private company out there. When difficult times like this occur, one of the things that frequently gets cut might be training budgets. So employees have to, on their own, look at things through professional societies and other avenues to gain experience and leadership in their industry. And I think for me, throughout my career, I was fortunate my employers provided some of that, but I spent a lot of time both on the job and outside kind of watching what other people did, learning by example from seeing leaders that I wanted to emulate, or perhaps ones that I didn't want to emulate, the things that I thought were not good leadership skills. And then, looking for opportunities outside of work to pick up my own training, if you will.
A president we once worked for, I'll never forget the statement. He said to us, everybody's a marketer. That was 30 plus years ago he said that. I never forgot it. Because in a company, everybody's a marketer. Do you apply that kind of a concept here as far as getting a message out? That what do you encourage employees to say to the public or just anybody they meet about?
Well, I tell them they represent the agency, they represent me, and they represent the industry. And they should be proud to talk about what we do. They should be proud to talk about what we're changing for the benefit of the public and to reduce our costs, improve our products, improve the efficiency of what we're doing. They should be proud of that and communicate it. And beyond that, one of the things that we instituted here when I started was a concept called IdeaLink, which is a web-based tool for people to submit ideas. Now, everyone probably has suggestion boxes and other things like that to say, give us a suggestion. To me, I wanted them to know that I think highly of their ability, no matter what they do in this organization, and I think highly of the importance of that position. I tell everyone all the time, look, I have a role here and you have a role here. Mine is no more or less important than yours. And each one of us is responsible to move the agency forward. I want you to constantly be thinking about what you're doing and what we could do better. And then tell me if there's something you think we should change. And send it in through IdeaLink. The idea will be analyzed. It'll come to me. I'll personally review it and then let you know whether we're going to implement it or not. And just in the year we've had over 800 suggestions, of which we've implemented 250. And I'd say of the ones that are reviewed, of the 250 we've implemented, that's 250 out of 275. I mean, that means these are highly quality ideas. People are thinking about this before they send them in. And to me, that sends a message to the employees that I care about their thoughts. I care about, I want them to care about what they're doing every day, not just come to work and do what they did yesterday, but think about how could I do it better? Advance the organization, advance the industry.
So you must be reviewing some of those while you're bottle feeding twins. I mean, how do you say you personally look at every one of those?
I do.
And then do you assign people to review them? Or?
They get reviewed and then they come to me with the review.
Okay.
But I think there's, if you're going to ask people to put the idea to you, you should be willing to carve the time out of your schedule to review it for them. And I think as a leader of a large organization like this, I mean, you and I, the company you referred to, the president that spoke to us, he came around and said good morning to us every day,
Yes,
which made an impression on me.
That was excellent.
But that was a 25 or 30 person company. This is 11,700 people across the entire state. I can't go around and say good morning to everyone, nor can I have a conversation even with the group of them. I try to get around and visit with the offices and bureaus at least once a year. But if I'm here for 8 years, there'll be 10,000 people I might not meet. So, what the IdeaLink does, one, is it tells them I'm interested in what they're doing. Secondly, by reviewing it, I was just telling somebody this today, is that it gives me a chance to know that what they're dealing with and what they think could be done differently in every aspect of the business. So it helps me to learn about what they're doing out there in the field. People that I may never meet, I'll know their names because I saw the idea they submitted to me. And whether we implement it or not, they took the time to tell me something that they thought could be done better. And it helps me to learn about what's happening on a daily basis in the organization. And I think it creates a culture of leadership in that we're asking everyone to think about how do you advance the organization. And I think for any organization to be successful, you need that culture of saying, how do we continually get better? And out of that will come your leaders.
Excellent. And in my view, that is desperately needed in leadership today. I got to say that. That's the type of leadership we need. You also mentioned that I know that you do a lot of your own emails. It's like, talk about how you communicate with your people and why you might send your own emails to people.
Well, again, for the president of the company, I talked, even in my prior firm, we were 350 people. I probably knew on a first name basis, even though they were scattered geographically around the Mid-Atlantic region, I probably knew 200 at least, maybe 250. Here, I can't talk to everyone every day. If I could, I would. I think there's nothing more effective for a leader than to communicate with their staff and exchange ideas. What am I working on that might affect them? What are they working on that should shape what I'm spending my time on? It's hard to do that with this big of an organization. So for me, what I think is very important is for me to communicate to them where I think we're heading and what things I think might affect us and therefore affect them. And I do that through sitting down periodically and sending emails. In today's technology, right. I can do that. So I send emails. I write them myself because I want them to know that it came from me. It wasn't someone preparing a speech for me or preparing comments, but it's something I thought that was important to tell them. I would tell them in person if I could. And I do frequently. When I get around the state, I'll tell them everything I know about what's happening and where we're going, and I take questions from them about anything they want to talk about. And then because I can't see all 11,700 of them, I'd say 4 or 5 times a year, maybe more, I'll sit down when I think it's significant enough and type out an email. Sometimes it's simply a holiday greeting, right. Which then sometimes it's like after the floods, a heartfelt thanks for what those folks did and recognition for the people who sacrificed maybe things they should have been doing at home to take care of our responsibilities, and letting them know that I know about it and I care about it. So to me, it's just something that I don't think anything would be more important than communicating with everyone you work with. And for the role that I have here, again, not that I think this is any more important than the roles of the people that you see walking through this room, I need to communicate to them the vision of where we're going, what I think we need to do to get there, and if I don't, then how on earth can they support what I'm doing?
That's right. That's excellent. That's huge, because I once worked for somebody that didn't do that, and we were lost. We had no vision. We didn't know what the vision of the organization was, and then that person moved on and another person came in. He communicated with us, told us what was going on. He had an open door policy. He did answer his own emails, and I sent him an email once and he answered it in 3 minutes. This guy has a lot to do. You kind of wonder how they balance that time, but it was important for me to hear direct from him. Let's talk about leading the public a bit. What's your message to the public about transportation issues? How do you tie that in with, you work for the governor, Governor Tom Corbett? He has a vision, he has expectations. I can't imagine what kind of expectations he has for you. Might be big. How does that play out, and how does that get conveyed to the public?
Well, let's start with the governor's expectations. I think you probably have seen for the couple of years we've been in office now that he believes we need some fiscal restraint and make better use of the dollars we have. And I guess what I've talked to the public about is when I'm out on the speaker's tour, when I'm out with the public in general, is, to me, I view this organization as these are community-owned assets, meaning the 40,000 miles of road that we own as a state, 25,000 bridges. You and I are part owners of this. We're the shareholders, if you will, of this corporation. PennDOT's the corporation that maintains it, and you pay into it. Everybody out there that drives on the road, that owns a car and pays registration, license fees, and gas taxes are basically paying your shares into this corporation. So they're the shareholders. And I tell them all the time that you need to believe that we at PennDOT are entrusting of those dollars that you're giving us, and that we're constantly pushing the envelope on modernizing the agency, just like a private company would, to make best use of every dollar you give us. And in the end, our job is to take care of those 40,000 miles of road and 25,000 bridges that you depend on. All right, whether you're driving, your kids are riding to school on them, even if you don't drive, you're relying on this network because the food that comes to the grocery stores, it gets from farm to market, the products that you buy at the store, much of it comes across our transportation system: rail, airports, roads, ports. And we have to take care of those so that you can be relying on the fact that your food's going to be there at the grocery store, that the clothes are going to be there when you need to buy them, your kids are going to get to school safely, and that you're going to be able to drive around the state. So when I talk to the public, my message is we are looking at every dollar very hard that you give us. And we are constantly pushing the envelope. As a matter of fact, we have a team here, we're calling it Next Generation of PennDOT, that is working solely focused on what should we be doing differently going forward. Because in a private company, if this was a private company and we were going out to the shareholders and we said, we want you to keep investing in us, they'd want to know, what are you doing with our money and what do you expect to be doing differently going forward? And to me, public or private should be no different. And that's where the governor and I are closely aligned in believing that we need to instill in the taxpayers a belief that we are working as hard as possible to make best use of every dollar they give us. Now, frankly, for our agency, we have fixed assets, meaning these are roads, bridges, rails that age and need to be replaced. And a part of my message has been that with the age and condition, there's eventually going to be a need to invest more of your money. But before I ask you to do that, you got to be confident that I'm taking care of what you're already giving me. And that's, I believe, something that we have to instill. That's, you mentioned everybody's a marketer. I need everybody in this industry to be singing from the same sheet music in that regard, as saying this is important to communicate what we do with the dollars and how efficient we are with them. I think that instills a willingness for people to then want to invest more. It's the same way companies go about raising money, instill confidence in their shareholders.
I've heard you speak at events like engineering events, and exactly what you're saying there. I've also seen a couple of news publications about well, I saw it on the Awards for Excellence as I was researching on this for this interview. There's some public notices out there. Is PennDOT doing anything like, you mentioned a couple of programs, the suggestions program. That's a big deal. You just mentioned another program that you're doing. Are there other ways that PennDOT wants to or is getting this message out to the public so that they can hear what you're telling me right now?
Well, we're trying to do it through media opportunities and not just me going around to chamber events and speaking events, but also getting it out through media outlets and, when given the opportunity, talk about it with any media interview. So all of our different partners are talking about. We also, it's not just us. We also have created an organization called the State Transportation Innovation Council, where we brought 40 members from the private sector and educational institutions together to, again, develop ideas for things that we should be doing differently going forward, using new products, using new procedures, policies, practices, et cetera, that are either national, international, or simply from our own state that manufacturers believe would help us reduce costs or improve performance. The State Transportation Innovation Council, I've told all of them, you need to communicate this with the folks you work with, so that, again, we're getting out to the public at large what we're doing and the business community. It's important.
Excellent, good. I want to talk a little bit about strategy, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, a very big task, Secretary of Transportation. Most people would just figure it's bridges and highways, and they see a lot of things that need fixed. 40,000 miles of highways, 25,000 bridges, but it's also other modes of transportation: aviation, rail traffic, mass transit, intrastate highway shipping traffic, motor vehicle safety and licensing, driver's licensing. It's the ports, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Erie. It's focused on intermodal transportation. That is a huge task. All done with an approximate budget of $3.8 billion in federal state funds, which comes from motor vehicle fuels tax, which is dedicated solely to transportation issues, all done with 11,000 employees here at PennDOT. That's huge.
If you stop and think, it could overwhelm you on any given day, I suppose. But,
speak to that. Speak to...
Well, it's think about a product getting here. You and I are sitting here in these chairs. How'd they get here? All right, they could have come in by ship. They could have come in through a port, got on a train, and been shipped across the country to a distribution center, and then trucked to a store. All the projects you mentioned that I've worked on in my career, many of those were intermodal. Many of them tied freight movement and people movement. In the end, transportation is about moving freight, moving people. And either one, we've all done it. You've probably been on a plane, you've been on a train, you've been on a bus, and I don't know if you've been on a ship, but freight comes all those different modes, people come in all those different modes. So most of my studies and the whole course of the 30 years, you get out of college and you go to school for civil engineering. And then you start learning about how to apply civil engineering. And you learn that really It's about what I said, moving people and goods safely and efficiently. So all the different modes, if you look at it like you said and think about it all, it can seem overwhelming, and yet, we break it down to, okay, if we're going to move something through the Port of Philadelphia, how's it going to connect? What kind of connections do we need, and analyze that pathway. And through the various modes, whether it's highways, rail, ports, there's a pathway through there that we have to analyze how that shipping is going to occur. And that's something, even right now, we have a statewide freight study that we just started because we're deepening the river in Philly, and the Panama Canal is being changed. There's going to be an economic opportunity created there for additional shipping in Philadelphia. Where do we target our investments? With that $3+ billion we have, how should we target investments to both take advantage of the economic opportunity for job creation, which is a big thing for the governor, a big thing for us in the state of Pennsylvania, be competitive economically to create those jobs, and how do we safely and efficiently move the freight that's going to come through there to make sure we can handle it? How should we be targeting those investments today? So it's a combination of really planning, looking to what's there today, what's likely to happen in the future, what could change, talking to private business, saying, what are you thinking? And then targeting our investments to make sure that we're investing in the right places at the right time.
This is showing me the absolute necessity for the blend between the technical expertise and the ability to lead, and putting those two together to making it all work. It's like you can't have one without the other, and you're demonstrating that. And you're talking all the technical. You just listed a whole bunch of major issues that are all technical, but then you've got this leadership ability to work with 11,000 people and communities. You're working with communities and counties, and so it's like it just emphasizes to me the importance of developing our leadership skills so that we can get these things done, which leads me to my next question. Which is seemingly, and I'll title this, Doing the Impossible. And I want to read this quote that was stated by you. It says, "We have a $3.5 billion shortfall." Now this is in Pennsylvania. That represents 20 years of underinvesting in our infrastructure. We, Pennsylvania, need to enact a comprehensive, inflation-sensitive solution, one that builds a strong initial funding source and grows in time to allow Pennsylvania to ramp up its program and address the needs of the Commonwealth. This requires a sustainable revenue source dedicated to transportation. And here's a kicker. Otherwise, we will simply push this problem to the future generations and lose economic competitiveness to states that invest in infrastructure. I read this and I reread this several times. It's powerful. There's a lot in those couple of sentences that you stated. It speaks of is it impossible to get this done, plus tied into the fact that we are the Keystone State. I don't know the details, but I-81, what is that, the most traveled truck traffic through our city here in Harrisburg, PA?
It is.
So we are the Keystone State. And and all that speak to, this is a huge deal.
It is, and it's something that when I'm out speaking about this, I always tell people, you should care about this, and you should care about it because it's part of our economic fabric. We are, the history of Pennsylvania, canals, railroads, a lot of our economic history is built around the fact that our geographic location and the natural resources that we have. And today we're developing a new one, Marcellus Shale. How do we build the infrastructure to both develop that resource and then export it so that it can help our economy? There's been coal, there's been, as I said, the canals. Transportation has always been an integral part of our Pennsylvania economy, partly because of our geographic location. You can't get to the Northeast without going through Pennsylvania. And a lot of the nation's population is within driving distance of Pennsylvania. So, for that $3.5 billion gap that we talk about, if you think back about when a lot of this infrastructure was built, back in, especially the road systems back in the 60s when the interstate was built,
right.
Our parents' generation paid about a third of the price of a gallon of gas to build that, to finance it. Over time, we have eroded that down to now we pay less than half of that. We pay less than about 10% of the price of a gallon of gas goes into investing back into the roads and bridges to take care of them. And you mentioned I have, twin that are over 1 year old, Jackson and Jocelyn, by the way, are the names.
Good.
For me, in this role, it's a unique thing to take a perspective and saying, what am I doing while I'm in this role about the next generation? What are my kids going to face if I don't do certain things while I'm in government? And I think for this generation, it's a question of we're not investing nearly as much as the previous generation did to build and now take care of this infrastructure. So for Pennsylvania to be competitive and to safely move people and products through here, are we going to invest? Or are we going to say we don't want to spend more? Let the next generation pay for it. Now, I've often likened this to when you first start out of college, you frequently have a credit card that you buy stuff with because you can't really afford it, so you borrow the money. And when you make a minimum payment on the credit card and the interest rate's high, the interest grows faster than your minimum payment. That's what we're doing right now on transportation. We're making kind of a minimum payment and we're letting the interest build. And every year that $3.5 billion gap gets bigger. Why? It's a $3.5 billion annual gap. When you don't spend it one year, then you defer it. The next year the gap grows to $3.7 billion. The year after that it's $3.9 billion. And so what are you doing? You're pushing that bill to the next generation.
Right.
And in the end, it's going to hurt our competitiveness. And I always say too, all of us make decisions every day about costs. We look at what should I do? Should I fix my car, or is it at the point where I should replace it? The appliance guy comes and looks at your refrigerator and says it's going to cost $300 to put this part in, and the whole refrigerator costs $500. We all make decisions like that every day. Well, right now in transportation, choosing not to invest costs you. And the reason I say that is if you're driving around a posted weight restricted bridge, if you're a farmer or a business and the bridge is weight restricted because we can't afford to fix it, you're spending fuel to drive around it. That's a cost. If you're sitting in congestion and on a daily basis sitting there for 15 or 20 minutes, the trip's taking you an extra 20 minutes longer than it should, you're wasting fuel, you're burning, that's charging you. It's a cost that you're bearing. If we invested instead, we could fix those problems and reduce that cost. So I think for everybody out there that's concerned about this or interested or just listening to me now, you should be concerned. If you're not, you should be. One, it's about public safety. Two, it's about a generational responsibility and a cost that's simply going to get passed on to the next generation. These are assets, just like the car that you own, the roof on your house. If you don't take care of it, I don't think I would want to turn over my home to my kids and say, as I pass on, here's the property. I did nothing in maintenance to it for 30 years, so here you go. What are you handing them? You're handing them something that's a big cost. You wouldn't want to do that to your children. And to me, that's what we're doing.
Do you think, given the current economic situations and the current shortfalls, of course, I know the vying for these additional funds, do you think that as a country and as individuals, maybe we just can't expect to have a perfectly smooth highway anymore? We've got to live with some discomfort.
Well, I think that's a choice that we ought to all be thinking about. Again, if it's not a smooth highway and if there are bad surfaces, which we're seeing on our roads because of our funding situation, there's a cost built into that. All right? And the cost to you is the cost in wear and tear on your tires and your shocks. And as I said, in congestion, if we're not fixing the problem, we're charging it a different way. We're charging additional fuel consumption. Our report that I chaired the commission on, recommended a series of fee increases that would cost the average driver about $250 a week. If somebody drives 12,000 miles a year, about $250 a week. That's less than the price of a gallon of gas. If you're sitting in congestion, you're spending more than a gallon of gas a week sitting in congestion every day. So it comes down to an economic decision. And when you say, should we expect less, what's less cost you? And would it cost you less in the long run to fix it? And to me, I think the numbers speak for themselves, that it would be cheaper for everyone if we'd pay a little more now to fix the problem, rather than say, I don't want to pay anything, it's going to cost me more in the long run.
That's a good message. That's an excellent message. So that ties into, and you may have already answered it, how to win over others on your ideas or the governor's ideas. The idea of inflation-sensitive funding, higher gas taxes, the issue of the possibility of cameras at red lights so that people automatically get a ticket if they go through. A lot of people are going to resist that. How do you sell these kind of things to the public? But you partly answered that, and there's a cost if we don't fix these things.
To me, again, 28 years in running a private company, Every place I've worked on the private side, every decision you make, you sit down and you analyze, what if we do it, what if we don't do it? All right, what's the implications in cost, what's the implications to the company, what's the implications to the staff, anybody who could be affected by this decision, what are the positives, what are the consequences? And all I've tried to do in this role is present that. And to me, you mentioned red light cameras. We have accidents at intersections and we have people running red lights. We're not doing this for revenue, we're doing this for safety. And there's a proven correlation that once you put the cameras in, people stop running red lights. All right, and well, the red light's there for a reason, right? It's there for safety. It's not there because we're trying to generate revenue. The folks who think it's revenue generating and think we shouldn't be doing it for revenue, I'd ask you to just compare that to, do you think we shouldn't be doing speeding tickets? Why do we do speeding tickets? The policemen are there to basically keep you driving the safe speed for safety. Not because we want revenue out of it, but simply the highway was designed for 55 miles an hour. That's what you should be driving at, not 75. That's unsafe. I don't see anybody arguing that we shouldn't be issuing speeding tickets. All we're doing is using technology to reduce the cost of the enforcement. And in the end, and for everyone who's opposed to red light cameras, I would just say, think of the consequence. If there's accidents, if you know the accidents are going to be reduced from this, and you know compliance is going to go up, if it was your kid riding a bike across an intersection, or your family member entering that intersection, wouldn't you prefer that people stop? And do you really care how we chose to get them to stop? The way we're choosing is lower cost than going out and hiring a bunch of policemen. It's lower cost, and in the end, it's going to improve safety. So, to me, that is the ultimate responsibility of this organization, for me in this position, is to ensure that you and your family can go out on those highways and be safe. And this is one method that improves safety.
It's excellent. What I've heard you say, what I got out of it is yeah, there is this large task here, but we take what we know, we take what we've learned, and we look at the pluses and the minuses, like you say, what if we do and what if we don't, and we weigh that out. And then depending on how whoever, maybe it's a governor's decision, maybe it's the public's decision, maybe it's a legislator's decisions, whether we pay more taxes or not, what falls out, falls out. You have done your duty to put it all out there for people to decide whether they want to be part of it or not.
People need to have the opportunity to make an informed decision. My job is to give them the information on both sides of the ledger and look at it objectively. I'm a public servant, and I recognize that my role as Secretary of Transportation is to provide factual information to the public, again, who I consider to be our shareholders, to the legislature, who I consider to be the board of directors of this company, and then allow them to make their decisions. And the public will influence the legislators and vice versa. I'm just simply trying to present, here's a factual evaluation of where the system is, where the investment level is, what I think it should be, and what are the consequences of doing it and not doing it.
One more question and then we'll wrap up. Work-life balance. Of course, when you got this job, I remember, it was right shortly after that you had your twins, and here you are in a new job, significant job. And how do you balance all that out?
Well, I think anybody in any job has to balance work and life. And to me, all the years of leading up to this helped me to do that. Frankly, when I was younger, I didn't do such a good job at work-life balance. I worked too much. When I was in my late 20s, early 30s, you say I'm having twins late in life. I didn't get married until I was 42. Well, I didn't do such a good job of balancing work and life when I was young. And I think when you're younger, and I'll just say this to everybody that's watching this, there's a tendency to get wrapped up in your career and think, this is exciting, it's interesting, I've got to go do all these things that are going to help me get into a better position, leadership, and you might miss some opportunities on the personal side that you don't want to miss. Fortunately for me, I'm getting these opportunities later in life, perhaps later than I should have, in the case some days the twins wear me out, but I think any parent would tell you that. But whether you have this child that I have now, I prioritize my family. And each week I have to look at the week and say how many days and time, how much time is available, and what am I going to prioritize about this job. I could spend endless hours on any given topic here. I have to decide which ones I'm going to focus on that week. But as I blend and look at the week, I have to look at what's important to my family, what's important to me and my health, meaning I'm still playing basketball, I'm still getting to the gym to stay in shape. I still play in a band because that helps me kind of release away from this technical field and play music, which is a little less structured. And I know that in the end, both the physical activity and the band activity will make me a better father, a better husband, a better Secretary of Transportation.
Touch on that a little bit more, the band, because I remember when you were first made secretary, there was an article in the newspaper. Barry Schoch is playing in a band, appearing at some local place, and I heard you make some statements about that, which made me think of you. This guy's a real person. So
you didn't know that before?
No, but I guess it's, and I'll touch on. When I heard some things about how you're communicating with employees, and I was thinking, yeah, this guy's got something going. And yet, he's not going to stop playing in a band because he's Secretary of Transportation, because some people might not appreciate that.
Well, you know, when you say it's like, what's the secretary doing?
Not that you play badly in the band.
Right, why is he in a rock and roll band? He's Secretary of
Yeah.
Transportation. But, you know, each one of us out there, everyone here that's watching this, you have your own personal interests that make you feel good about yourself. And everybody's different. I mean, I like to read fiction books. I like to go fishing and surf fishing. I like to go to the beach. I mean, those are my interests. Music's an interest. Athletics are an interest for me. I think the blend of as you ask, in a personal, professional life is about making sure that you're taking care of yourself and your own interests. And you know, obviously, family's a big part of that. Your responsibilities as a parent, as a spouse, are a big part. As a brother, as a sister, as a son, you know, a daughter, the family responsibilities are a part of your life. But if you defer all your personal interests and you say, okay, I like playing music, but I'm not going to do that anymore because of my job, your job will suffer. And for me, I know that the days that I play basketball, I know that I get good physical exercise. It felt good. I felt better about myself. I'll feel better, and I'll make better decisions here. So I think everyone has to look at every week and say, how can I keep a balance in here? Now, some weeks it's tougher than others. Some weeks the demands of the job or your family will say you have to sacrifice something. I think the importance for me is then to say, okay, well, the next week I may have to move the curve a little bit that direction and spend a little more time on personal things there, so that in the end I don't feel I cheated my job, my family, or myself. Not easy, but I think it's as important as anything else you might do in your career development and your personal development, is making sure that you take care of all those things.
Excellent. As a closeout, and then I'll wrap it up, anything you want to say, a message to the viewers about whether it's PennDOT, whether it's leadership, whatever?
I would just say that in general, when you go through life, different challenges become before you, present themselves, different opportunities present themselves. And I would just say that for me, you asked me about, did anyone ever say, you're never going to achieve that? I've looked at it every day, every week, every month, is what appears in front of me and what can I do about it? What can my role be in helping to improve that situation? And I think if you do that, you will rise to whatever level of leadership or responsibility that you're comfortable with and you're capable of. But you'll show everyone around you that you care about what you're doing, you care about them by communicating with them, and you'll be successful. And for me, I couldn't be more thankful for all the people I've worked with, both here within the department and every place, people like you and folks that have been friends for my entire life, that have influenced me. Whether any of you know it or not, every single one of you has had an influence on me and continues to do so. And so for everybody out there, I'd encourage you to interact and listen and watch what people are doing around you. Take an interest in what they're doing, because for one, it will help a relationship with them, and you may learn something from it, and they'll learn something from you. For me, it's been a tremendous ride. I've had a great deal of success, and if the whole career ended tomorrow, I'd be incredibly thankful for what I've experienced as a professional and as a person. So don't ever, if Jim says, someone says you can't achieve something, that's simply not, shouldn't enter your field of vision. You'll achieve what you believe you can achieve. And to me, I've always believed that I can achieve whatever I set out to do. Do I always have the successful end to those pursuits? Of course not. But as Jim said earlier, you never stop trying, you never stop learning, you never keep advancing. And I'd encourage all of you to try to do that on a daily basis.
Awesome. I want to thank you, Barry.
Good to see you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
There you have it. Interview with Barry Schoch on leadership topics as related to his job as Secretary of Transportation. This interview was every bit as special as I thought it was going to be. Because when I've heard him speak over the last couple of months at Harrisburg University at an engineering function, I knew there was something excellent here. And I hope you find it too. And also I hope that you pay attention to what he's been saying about the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and don't listen to the negatives that you're hearing, but there's something going on here that's pretty doggone good that we need to hear about, we need to look for, we need to pay attention to, because our transportation systems affect us. So that's it. Harrisburg Biz Leaders. We offer great content on leadership. This is our first interview with a high-profile leader who's a down-to-earth character. So thank you for viewing, and we'll see you at Harrisburg Biz Leaders. Awesome, dude.
Thanks.